ideology and global morality, we turn our focus to Israel-Palestine conflict through the lens of shifting power, personal history, and a provocative vision for peace. As the war in Israel rages on and the political ground across the Middle East trembles, a new geopolitical chessboard is taking shape. Indeed, there are many players. Joining us today to help us unpack who's playing what side, how, where, who's winning, who's not winning. How do we understand this chessboard? Is a wonderfully smart man. He's a lot smarter than I am. He knows a lot more about this than I do. His name is Mahmood Ode, popularly known as Mahmood OD. He's a native of Haifa, a city at the heart of both historic Palestine and present-day Israel. Having lived through decades of war and marginalization, Mahmood now advocates a single democratic state across all of historic Palestine, where Jews, Muslims, and Christians and people of all faiths can live with full equal rights. Mahmood is possibly the third, maybe fourth guest I've had, including he's in the company of the likes of Ilan Pape. I've forgotten the name of my other guest that was here. And they all believe in a single state for both. Mahmood, welcome to Nigeria, to Borderlines, to Crazy Lagos.
Thank you so much for inviting me, number one, and thank you to all of my Nigerian listeners. For your knowledge, Nigeria is one of my top 10 viewership comes from.
Wow.
So I have quite a few bit of people listening to me from Nigeria. So greetings to you, of course, and thank you for having me, and to all of our listeners in Nigeria.
Like, I have to say, as you saw the way I was gesticulating, the idea of a single state. I don't know whether you were able to listen to my previous interview with Ambassador Freeman, the Israeli ambassador to Nigeria. That was the interview before yours. And indeed, we talked about, I asked him about the fact that Palestinians in Gaza have to get permission in order to go to the West Bank. And he said, they have to go through Israel. Here you are telling us everybody should live in one democratic country. Both, all people, all religions together. Mahmood, how?
Well, number one, I didn't know you were speaking with the Israeli ambassador. Otherwise, I would have at least listened to it.
Oh.
Now, number two, in relation to the actual solution, that's the sane solution. What we have in Palestine today is insanity. We have a supremacist ethno-state that gives the rights to Jewish people more than it does to other people. It considers itself to be the nation state of the Jewish people. And no modern country should be based upon racial or religious superiority. Now, the idea of a one democratic state is not something new. I think many people, and I think you articulated that very well in the way you spoke about it, and I love that, to be honest with you, because it can be so confusing to people.
Yeah.
Like, there's all this war, and how can that happen? Well, number one, Palestine historically had all faiths living there. It had Jewish people, it had Christians, it had Muslims, and of course people of no faith who choose not to have any faith. We've had that historically. So historically, there's a very, very long track record of strong coexistence in Palestine, whether it was part of the Greater Levant or whether it was as an individual province during previous empires. Now, the Palestinians, before the establishment of the State of Israel and after the ethnic cleansing in 1948, of course, which followed decades, it came decades after the Balfour Declaration and the rise of the Zionist movement. We need to understand how this movement came to power and where did this movement come from. You're talking about a movement that, number one, was initially a non-Jewish idea. It was initially sourced in Christianity. It was Christians who came as pilgrims to Palestine, believing about the idea that the Jews need to come so that they can have the end of days according to their beliefs. And of course, the list goes on. Now, Zionism struggled heavily to recruit people from within the Orthodox community. In the beginning of the 20th century, they managed to convince a few rabbis with the idea. However, the majority of the Orthodox traditional Jewish people, the followers of the Torah, refused the idea, and they still do. They still do very heavily. Now, there's a lot to talk about this period, but I thought that it was very important to note it because some people think that history, started in 1948. No. And before that, we were living together. Jewish people were praying in Palestine. Many people describe themselves as Palestinian Jews. As a matter of fact, I have friends from my native city of Haifa who call themselves Jewish Palestinians.
If I may interrupt you, indeed, Golda Meir called herself Palestinian. She said she has a Palestinian passport. She was born in Palestine.
And that's another coincidence, isn't it? Golda Meir was another person who was reported to say on the fall of Haifa in 1948, when the Zionist militias terrorized the Arabs, Christians and Muslims out of Haifa city, I came into the home and I saw the coffee still fresh and the food still there on the table. And I thought this reminded me of what happened in the ghettos of Germany. This was also something attributed to Golda Meir. Now, the idea of a one democratic state or a one-state solution, because, with democracy, it depends on how you interpret it, right? Lots of dictatorship call themselves democracies, but the concept is power to the people. That is the concept here.
Right.
The people have the right to make their decisions. We have had a movement here that was established by Western colonizing powers, came and imposed itself on the people of the land, on the indigenous people of the land of Palestine. Now, when they formed a Jewish state and wanted to form a Jewish state, the resistance came not because people didn't want another state or had a problem with the concept of anyone living in Palestine. It's because the Palestinians wanted a one state for all people, for everyone. They did not want to divide it based on racial or religious supremacy, which is clearly what we have now. We don't just have it in talk, we have it in writing, we have it in law. Therefore, I am not an inventor of the concept of the one-state solution. I'm just playing my part. I'm just playing my part as a person who was born in that land, a person who knows very well that there is a very big chance, and there's evidence also of coexistence historically. But there needs to be political movement. There needs to be a political decision to get rid of the regime of supremacy in Palestine and replace it with a state that respects everyone, regardless of their faith and religion or race. Now, many people spoke about it before. You spoke about some of your guests before, Ilan Pappé. Ilan Pappé, who's also a native of the city of Haifa, an Israeli historian, who wrote intensively about the case of Palestine, about
That's
the
who I
ethnic
was
cleansing.
trying to remember. Miko Peled.
Miko Peled was a great one too. I personally spoke with Miko Peled as well. Miko Peled, his father was considered one of the Israeli heroes in the 1967 war, and then he turned into a peace activist. And in both cases, we're talking about Israeli Jews who were born there. But the only difference about them, these two, is that they decided to think outside of the box. They decided to break the bubble, to burst that bubble of manipulation and brainwashing from the beginning. And Israel, of course, brainwashes people from the get-go. So the concept is very realistic. And if tomorrow there are political decisions, if tomorrow certain political decisions are made to have equal rights between the Jordan River to the sea, you will see almost everyone accepting that idea, apart from those who want supremacy. If you do want supremacy, then you will have a problem.
Okay.
But if you don't want supremacy, you will not have a problem.
Okay, here's the thing. There are some, how should I say, questions, commas, as we say in Nigeria. We say there's a comma. So there are some commas that come in as I was listening to you. The first one being, in your suggestion of one state, right now we have a Jewish Israeli population who, whether you agree or not, whether anybody agrees or not, actually feels threatened by the governance of both Gaza and in the West Bank. They say well, that's what the ambassador says. It says they are threatened. So what I do want to say to you is, what then do you say to those who, rightly or wrongly, the Israelis, or the Jews, the Jewish Israelis, who feel threatened, who feel, I can't live in one state with these people whom I've been told all my life from when I was born, actually hate me. And there's a charter that says I shouldn't exist or my state shouldn't exist. What would you say to them?
There are a lot of myths in what you've just said if you repeated them based on the Israeli ambassador. First, there is the Israeli ambassador. His title speaks for itself. He is the ambassador of a genocidal supremacist entity massacring infants every single day in the Gaza Strip. That's the ambassador who you spoke with. He is the ambassador of a country that has been committing ethnic cleansing and genocide for all of this time, that has been historically oppressing the Palestinian people in the West Bank and in Gaza, that has treated the Palestinian citizens of the State of Israel as Class B citizens. You're not talking about a normal ambassador of a normal country. Then we reach the myths. Well, of course they would feel threatened because they've had repetitive governments. They've had the Zionist movement constantly instilling fear in them. Isn't that the purpose of Zionism? Instill fear? Don't they constantly say, oh yeah, they want to kill us and they want to come after all of us? All of this is garbage. You spoke about a charter. I'm assuming that you're referring to the charter of Hamas.
Yes.
Hamas have a charter. Clauses 16 and 17 of that charter state clearly, the movement and the Palestinian people do not have a problem with Jewish people. They have a problem with oppressive, occupying Zionism. That's what the ambassador of the genocide state doesn't want to tell you. And that's what they constantly try and hide from you. Therefore, they resort to lies. Secondly, if we talk about Hamas or any other Palestinian movement, you're talking about a very natural response to constant oppression. You're talking about a totally legitimate resistance in the eyes of international law and in general human nature at the end of the day. Now, in relation to the concerns, well, you can see some of the Israeli prisoners who have been released from Gaza. Did they look like the Palestinian prisoners who Israel holds? How much positive feedback many of them said about their captives inside of the Gaza Strip? Because they have no intention clearly of killing them. If they had this bloodlust of murdering and slaughtering people, we would have seen many different things. The fact of the matter is, it's Israel, it's Zionism that is the biggest curse on the Jewish people, and that has been sending its people as cannon fodder to go and die for a genocidal lunatic called Benjamin Netanyahu, because he simply doesn't want to reach a ceasefire and he has interest in remaining in power. Benjamin Netanyahu's son is outside the country. He's sending the people who are still willing, by the way, because over half of them are refusing to go to the army now. They're refusing conscription. But those who they're forcing to go, they're killing them for what exactly? For the security of the Israeli people? History did not start on the 7th of October. The Palestinian people had hostages in Israeli dungeons who are constantly starved and sentenced to death, essentially, but without Israel declaring that there's a death sentence. They just do that through starvation and abuse, rape. We've seen the evidence coming from the state of Israel. And of course, you know, when 7th of October happened, we started to have this massive propaganda campaign as if, you know, history started on the day. History did not start from then.
Okay.
The Palestinian people have been living under a pressure bubble, under the pressure of Zionism throughout all of their life. They haven't been given hope. They haven't been given rights. They haven't been given freedom of movements. They weren't treated as human beings. Do you know why? Because the Israelis don't view them as human beings. Okay. Because Zionism doesn't view them as human beings.
Whoa, that's a lot there. But I have to come back to you on the rape. Israel will deny the rape, even though we did see a video not so long ago of an incident, a rape incident with an IDF. So Israel will say to you, no, that is not true. There is no evidence that we rape Palestinians, or indeed that our soldiers rape Palestinians.
It's because they're pathological liars. It's because they're pathological
well, where's your proof?
Liars. My proof is you saw the evidence in the camera that they raped the Palestinians. They stuck a stick in his behind, excuse me. It was very clear. The Israelis are speaking about it in the Israeli media. And that's what we've seen on cameras too. So Israel denying is like saying like the most compulsive person on earth, the compulsive liar, most compulsive liar per person on earth is saying something. These people lie more than they breathe. They establish their existence on lies. They created a fake identity. They constantly lie about current affairs. They lie to their own people. They have a prime minister who lies every single day. All of that is based on lies. And their lies and their propaganda and the fact that they come on radio shows or on television, and the fact that they have power and reach and can influence people and bribe them to speak what they want doesn't make it true whatsoever. At the end of the day, we have evidence on the ground to show what they've been doing.
Okay.
If you go to social media, any person with a social media account, go to my account on X, where I repost some of the images coming from Gaza of maimed, butchered infants, fetuses being killed every single day. People starve to death. No one can deny that. We have a genocide being live streamed on a global scale, yet some people have the audacity to come and even deny it. And the whether it's the Israeli ambassador or anyone else who constantly speaks about that, the evidence is far greater than any of the Israeli statements.
Let's go back, because you were born in Haifa and, you know, you've grown up with the history and seen this conflict all your life. Often people, you mentioned it earlier, but I'd like you to kind of take 2 minutes. Just yesterday was the 15th. Yesterday was 15th of May, Nakba Day, as marked by Palestinians. Talk to us, not about the Palestine post 1948, but 20th century Palestine that had literature and music and trade and, you know, travel and art and all these stuff. Talk to us about that. I'll give you 2 minutes to talk.
Well, thank you for mentioning about the Nakba. Firstly, do you know that we legally cannot commemorate the Nakba in the Palestinians of Israel? There was a law passed by one of the previous Israeli governments in around 2011 banning the commemoration of the Nakba, because they say you cannot commemorate the Nakba. It was this Independence Day. Does any state that has any sort of self-respect or any basic freedom tell people or force them what they commemorate and what they don't commemorate? Does any state with basic freedoms bans a flag, bans colors? You're talking about people who are paranoid because they know how wrong they are. Then, of course, we, the Palestinians who live in historical Palestine, are the bread and butter of Palestine. We are the Semitics of the land. We are the descendants of the Canaanites and the people who were living there. No people who traveled from Europe and claimed this right based on their fantasies. And to this day, the Palestinians stick to their identity. It doesn't matter how hard the successive Israeli governments tried to morph the identity of the Palestinians. That identity is there. And the more the Israeli authorities tried to go against it, the stronger it grew. And it's not going anywhere.
Okay.
Now, in relation to a potential solution, for example, the form of the state, even what the state is called, from my perspective, all of these things don't matter. I'm personally, if you ask me, nationality doesn't really matter to me. What matters to me is what kind of state do people live in? Do they live in a state that respects everyone equally, or do they live under an ethno-state or a religious supremacy? And I believe everyone in the 20th century wants to live under a state where everyone in that state receives equal rights.
Okay. Let's move on to today. There's so much to uncover. So, the last 4 days, actually, let's start from there. This whole week, Donald Trump, the president of the United States, did his Middle East tour. In Nigeria, we call it the Brotherhood Tour, where he went to see all the brothers, in the Gulf countries. Unpack that for us. Illustrate, what were your thoughts? So he went from Saudi Arabia. This is Saudi Arabia, which up until a few years ago was actually seen as a pariah state, especially when one remembers the murder of Khashoggi, the journalist.
Jamal Khashoggi.
Jamal Khashoggi, thank you. So he went to Saudi Arabia, then he went to Qatar, the chief negotiator himself, and of course he ended it in the United Emirates. Unpack the last 3 days for us and tell us how it will impact positively or negatively, or what it would mean for the Middle East, including Gaza, Israel, Jordan, peace and, progress, or will it actually hamper it? And Syria.
Yeah. Well, firstly, since when did the United States represent human rights and freedom? They never did. The United States was based on the mass killing of the indigenous people of America. The United States conducted the largest numbers of wars globally, and the United States killed the most people solely in the widest diversification of wars in the past century. So saying as if Donald Trump represents some sort of country championing human rights or freedom, going to meet another country that might have certain lacks of freedom of rights, freedoms or human rights or what have you, I think that can be slightly misleading. However, Donald Trump as a president is not a president who is really interested apart from anything than gain. Donald Trump comes from a business background. Donald Trump is a property mogul. Donald Trump wants to do deals. He is a very egoistic individual. He wants to be seen as a person who does stuff. And you can see that by his behavior even online. One day he will crown himself a king, the king of Britain. The other day he will create an AI generated image of him as the Pope. And then the other day he's saying, I want a statue of me in Gaza. You're not talking about a person who is interested in the American people. So he went there to get money. He went there to get money, and the Arab states, and there's a difference between the Arab state, between each Arab state and what their priorities are clearly happy to play ball with Donald Trump. And he went there and successfully got trillions now, if we want to calculate everything. Not just him, but his sons also. And the biggest problem is it's not viewed yet in American law as a problem. Like the Department of Justice, for example, in the United States, said that there's no problem in the United States president getting a 400 million airplane from Qatar. Then all of the deals that he's making. That's the main thing that Donald Trump is interested in. Of course, there are things that might be linked to their interpretation of security here and there. But the fact of the matter is, Donald Trump missed a visit to Israel. Usually, every American president who goes to the region will visit Israel, even if they're visiting a state that is not really having any official ties with the state of Israel. The fact that he went all the way without meeting Benjamin Netanyahu, I think this was the most significant thing. So despite the fact that we have a president of a country who Israel relies on fully, Israel does not exist without the United States support and the United States backing and the United States funding and all of that. He decided not to meet with Benjamin Netanyahu. And why did he not meet with Benjamin Netanyahu? Because he didn't meet with Benjamin Netanyahu as the Israeli Prime Minister refused to give him a deal as soon as he arrives. They refused to give him that. From the Arab side, he succeeded. He succeeded and he got what he wanted. and he made certain deals that are not necessarily great or viewed as amazing in relation to Israel. As a matter of fact, Israel warned, especially the projected deal that he is about to have with Iran. Now, the American population primarily, but this is a global thing too, because, well, what the United States does affects the global population. At one point, there was a famous Arab columnist who said, every person on earth needs to vote for the American president. They need to participate in American elections, because what the United States does, the world, therefore we elect him, if you understand. So there is a close deal on it. It's clearly, well, applying some sort of pressure based on things that were from there are happening behind curtains, applying pressure to try and get a deal. We're not there yet, though. Now, this is becoming more and more evident.
If I may interrupt you, here's the thing, though. He did go to Qatar. He did go to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia had said, and they've repeated, they've said it many times, we will not sign onto the Abraham Accord. My listeners, you must know what the Abraham Accord is now. That is the normalization of Israel with all the other states in the Middle East region. The Saudi Arabians have said, we will not sign on to the Abraham Accord unless there is peace in Gaza. The Qataris have continued to push for a ceasefire between both parties. We're not going to mention the UAE because they don't get involved. My question to you, though, is why didn't they, given the amount of trade, 600 billion is not small money, 400 million aircraft for free, as we call it in Nigeria, you know, fly and fly and fly away, is not small money. So why are the Arabs, given the amount of money they're spending and investing, why are they not leveraging actually their power, that access to actually get peace in Gaza?
That question is on point, and that question is a question probable. And that, unfortunately, is the harsh reality of these Arabs. We're talking about countries that previously applied pressure, by the way. For example, Saudi, in the days of King, they used the petrodollar. Lots of problems globally. And guess what? How have you leveraged the question? You have so much wealth, you have so much power. If you can save the life of, is it worth it? Of course it is. The Arabs slaughtered in Gaza are one of the human being who deserves human rights, who had to be something when they grow up. They are the everyone but the Arab states. And unfortunately, that's the state that has always is empty. For example, now what's happening is what line pressure now some of the Arab states more are calling to leverage of the gas and linking that to the deals that they apply. That's too late. I think deciders,
and this is where we are, because honestly, most of the world ask, why are the Arabs? Once soon as I open up my lines, I have no doubt one of my listeners will ask that question. Why are the Arabs, the Arab countries not coming to the aid? Now, let me bring it back to a more simpler one. There's supposed to be some 100 trucks or so aid waiting to go into Gaza. Those trucks, apparently, if they're let in, with the exception of this food that's rotten inside them, if those trucks could actually last for months, which would then allow others to come in. Those trucks are on the border. Give the Arabs, not Egypt, say, look, we want $1 just to that's not perfect. The children.
The right to representing that all of us share. We can talk to. I talk to the accused. There is trilateral between the inside and the inside, and then from Rafah has to be mutual. That's an agreement. However, let's not pretend that we care about agreements and international law when a country sitting there is breaching every single law on earth. Breaching international law, breaching regional laws, breaching its own laws, breaching humanitarian law, not caring about anything and publicly stating that they are implementing ethnic cleansing and openly saying that they want to starve people in Gaza. Go to the Israeli media and see their representatives and see many of the people too. Starve them to death, starve their children. Everyone is a terrorist. The infants are terrorists. Do this and do that. Are we going to pretend that we don't know? No, that's them. That's their reality. And the Arab states and other countries too shouldn't be pretending like they care about certain things when this country breaches them 24/7. And by the way, if we want to talk about international law, let's talk about international law. Every country around Israel has the right to carry out a preemptive strike according to international law. Because they have a reckless entity sitting next to them, openly attacking multiple countries next to it constantly and threatening to increase its attacks. And by the way, in international law too, Israel doesn't have a legal basis to establish itself as a Jewish state in international law. So the Arabs, many people are frustrated by them. However, the Palestinian people and anyone who is supporting the Palestinian people are not waiting on anyone. Yes, we say that in the form of criticism, but the form of criticism shouldn't come to put the efforts down. Okay. Oh, there I criticize and that's it. No, you need to do what you can do in terms of activism on the international law front, activism in the streets, activism in applying pressure on the governments to change course. And of course, thankfully, many people are awake to what's happening now. And the whole narrative is changing.
It's interesting. Incidentally, as a journalist, one of the things that one does get accused of is you sound like you are defending Hamas. Although they tend to forget that when I'm interviewing Hamas, I come down on Hamas the same way. But alas, let's go on. Here's the thing, though. The Israelis will tell you, and the ambassador actually said so. He said, tell Hamas to release the hostages. And
tell him to end his apartheid regime.
Okay, I move on
to
the next question.
Tell him to end the genocide.
Okay, in that case, I move on to the next. That was nice and short. Right. Operation...
Very nice and short, yeah.
Operation Gideon's Chariots. That's Israel's escalation. They want to go in. They're still claiming they want to delete or get rid of Hamas. 19 months on, as I did say to the ambassador, they have not been able to get rid of Hamas. Do you see a broader objective in Israel's intention?
Well, number one, Israel has been using Hamas as what we call in Arabic a bu'bu, like a ghost, Hamas, 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 Hamas. What is Hamas? Hamas is the Palestinian resistance movement established by people who have faced the suffering and who have suffered most under consecutive apartheid governments in Israel. You will see the people who founded Hamas, you will see people who witnessed massacres, people who had their father and mother killed, orphans, people who faced misery, people who were expelled from their homes. These are the people who form Hamas and form any other movement. Of course, Israel, with the backing of neo-colonial powers who, by the way, committed way more atrocities across the world, whether it's in Africa or Asia or Latin America, than Israel, by a long shot, by the way, some of the European governments, by a long shot. That's why they play ball with them on the Hamas thing. No one should fall for their trap. They're trying to deviate from the original conversation. The original conversation, the original discussion should be, why is there a supremacist ethno-state imposing its will by force against the indigenous people, killing them, starving them to death, conducting a genocide, and has been expelling them from their homes for the past 78 years? And why is that acceptable in the 21st century by countries who call themselves the champions and beacons of human rights? This is the peak of hypocrisy. Hamas is an antidote. Hamas is a symptom to a cancer. That cancer is called Zionism. Get rid of oppressive, occupying Zionism, you will have no resistance. Hamas themselves tell you, we prefer to get our rights without even fighting. How long have they spoken to Israel about having a prisoner exchange before the 7th of October? 9 years. Hamas, after their formation in the year 1987, offered Israel a 40-year truce. Israel refused. Israel refused to have peace with a peace partner after the Oslo Accords, West Bank, not led by Hamas, led by the Palestinian Authority, who, by the way, outright rejects armed resistance against Israel, which is, by the way, a legitimate act of resistance against an occupying entity. Let no one try and deviate from that too. Then Hamas had Israeli prisoners since 2014 because Israel imprisons and takes the real hostages by kidnapping them and detains them under what it calls administrative detention, which means basically kidnapping from the street and not telling anyone where they are and constantly expanding their stay in prison, in their dungeons, torturing them to death. They've had 10 years where they were telling Israelis, the Israeli governments, let's have a deal, release some of the prisoners so you can take some of your prisoners back. Why? Because there were 4 Israeli prisoners in Gaza since 2014. But Israel wasn't talking about them too much because they didn't want to do anything about them. And from their perspective, that was like collateral damage. So we had the 7th of October. The 7th of October, the day after, Hamas told Israel, we'll end the operation if you agree to a prisoner swap. Of course, you didn't hear that on mainstream media because that's not in their interest. Instead, Israel came up with all of the propaganda about its own massacres against its own people on the 7th of October by Israeli witnesses and by IDF pilots as well, who were ordered to go and kill everything moving back to Gaza, including Israelis. The massacres in the Nova Festival, the evidence from the ground about the fact that the firepower used to massacre so many Israelis couldn't have came from Hamas. They've hidden all of that, of course, instead took people to their propaganda tour.
Is that the accusation of the Hannibal Directive, which Israel has actually denied?
Directive. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. They deny that, but they implement it. They deny that, but they implement it like they deny and actually changed in the law certain things, but still implement it. Like the field execution. Field execution is not permissible by Israeli law, but they will move their way around it as an excuse to kill someone. That's why they kill people left, right, and center in the West Bank, even in their sleep. Okay. So they implemented the Hannibal Directive on a mass scale, and many of the Israeli prisoners of war who were released from Gaza spoke about how many times they were targeted on October the 7th. And the first one was Yocheved Lifshitz, who had what Israel called a bombshell interview after she was released, and then they stopped allowing all of the prisoners of war to have any press statements. They prevented them from doing that. Why? Because they don't want them to reveal the truth. Therefore, Israel causing all of these problems is the actual problem. Get rid of this apartheid regime. Okay. Get rid of the supremacy. Give the Palestinians their rights, and then we will reach a one-state solution. No problem.
Thank you. I've literally got 10 minutes left. But before, I'm going to open up the lines, and you all get 10, 20 seconds. Please do not, my co-host. They're my co-host, my listeners. They take over the show, Mahmood. You will soon learn. But before I open it up very quickly, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to answer this. What is the way forward, right? What's the plan? Rebuilding Gaza, the lives of the Palestinians, without Hamas. What is the way forward? Who do you see? How do you see that shaping up? 30 seconds. And calm down, people. I will open up.
Immediately end the genocide inside of the Gaza Strip, but focus on the problem immediately after that, which is the supremacist apartheid regime occupying Palestine. Okay. Israel as a country. Apply pressure to dismantle Israel as an ethno-state and implement a one democratic state that gives everyone equal human rights.
Okay. Hello.
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 Hello. Hello.
Yes, good afternoon. I can't hear you, I'm afraid. Pardon?
Greeting to our guest.
Yes, greetings to Mahmood. Yes, our guest is Mahmood. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. From the look of things, Hamas or Palestine has taken a position, and Israel has taken a position. My question is this. Who will blink first?
Okay.
Do we say that now? Will
You only get 20 seconds, sir.
Will you support Hamas to take more hostages from Israel?
Okay.
So that the war will continue.
Thank you. Right, I'll come to you, Mahmood. Write that down. Write that down. Don't worry, I'll tell you. The lines are going crazy. I'll tell you. What he was asking was, who will blink first? Are you supporting for Hamas to take more hostages from Israel? Hold on to the thought, and I'll answer this. Hello.
Good evening, Sisi once again.
Good evening, Emmanuel. You have 20 seconds. I don't have time, I'm afraid.
Okay. I've seen some videos of the Israeli children in classrooms, who their teacher has been teaching, that the Palestinians will be eliminated in the next 10 years. And if there are anyone left, they will be slaves. With this mentality on the brain.
Oh, you've seen such videos from Palestine, right? Okay.
Yeah, from Israel.
You saw it in Israeli platforms. Okay.
Yeah, yes. With this mentality being put on the children of Israelis,
okay.
Isn't it going to be difficult with the advocacy, of your guests?
Single states.
And the group is represents, that they should have a one-party.
One single state. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm coming to you, Mahmoud. Be writing those down. I'm going to need you to remember it. Hello.
Hello, Cecile. Good evening to you and Mr. Mahmood.
Good evening. Good evening, Mrs. Oboli. You have 20 seconds, very quickly.
All right. First off, let me commend your guest for gracing today's show and for speaking profoundly against the act of man's inhumanity to man currently ongoing. My question to him this evening would be that if he were to possess the powers of a genie, what would be the first wish he would carry out amidst this chaos? Okay. I know he has many wishes. What would be the first one he would carry out?
Well, thank you. That's a very human, existential question. And the last one before I come to you. Hello?
Yeah. How are you?
I'm very well, Titilokwe. 20 seconds. You don't get two.
I disagree with our guest on Donald Trump.
Okay.
I think Donald Trump is a bit better than the first time. And right now, look at what he's doing with Iran, even against the interests of Israel. He has normalized with Syria. And I believe something good can come in terms of peace from, within the Israeli from him. Because, for instance, now, MBS, that is the Crown Prince, told him bluntly that he's never going to do anything about Abraham Accord except Netanyahu is out.
Thank you. Okay. Mahmoud, I'm only going to give you 2 minutes. The lines are going crazy, by the way. Last question was, Titilokwe wasn't asking a question. He's saying he disagrees with you. The one before Titilokwe is from Mrs. Oboli. What is your wish? If you had a genie, what would be your first wish to sort out all of this? And also the other one is, I think it was from Emmanuel, who said he had seen videos on Israeli platforms about Palestinian children being taught, I think, hate against Israel. How do you propose a single state is possible with that kind of mindset that's being taught to Israeli children?
Number one, it would be equal human rights for everyone. Okay. Equal human rights. All of us as individuals deserve human rights regardless of our race, religion, or nationality. Very straightforward. The second one is, I had a chapter in my book about the education and how important education is. Now, education in a toxic, oppressive environment is problematic. That's why we need to get rid of that environment of Zionism, that massive problem that has been controlling the land of Palestine against the will of the indigenous people for so long. Get rid of that. That is the core problem. And then we talk about everything else. All of the talk about small details here and there deviate from the root cause of the problem, which is Zionism, an ideology based on hate, supremacy, and violence since its inception.
Okay. There was another question that said, are you supporting Hamas to take more hostages from Israel?
I don't support any political movement. I don't support any political movement. I'm a person who is sharing his own thoughts.
Okay. Right. I like the way you answer. Sharp and succinct. Thank you. Hello.
You don't have a lot of minutes, so I make life easier for you.
Yes, hello.
I love it.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes. Yeah, hello. Nathaniel calling from Lekki.
Go ahead, Nathaniel, very quickly.
Okay, I want to greet you, Mahmood, your resource person in the house.
Yeah.
Yes, I've listened to his own part. But now my question directly is this. Now, he claimed that he doesn't support, killing, terrorism, and all that. And we all knew that the Palestine actually attacked, the strike force on Israel, resulting to all this. I've listened to the narrative. But
are you talking about October 7th?
No, that's not true.
But
yes, exactly.
Go on.
Exactly. So what is the price? What does he think is the price for human life? At what point will Palestine release the hostages are allowed to reign, or does he believe will this continue until Hamas is completely wiped away? Is it not enough to release these hostages if he actually believes that life is vital?
Okay. Right. I'm not
There
sure
is
if
no
the
guarantee.
question-
There is no guarantee from Israel. There is no guarantee from Israel that they will end the war or stop their oppression, even if Palestinians release all of the prisoners of war, not the hostages. Those who are now remaining in the captivity of the Palestinian movements are IDF terrorists who were there supporting occupation and the besieging of the Gaza Strip. These are the people who are remaining in Gaza. Now, we need to find a core solution. That is the main point. The cycle of violence will continue if violence is constantly pushed on the Palestinian people. It's like you are talking to a woman who is constantly abused for all of her life for standing up against her oppressor and slapping him. You don't go to the woman who has been oppressed for all of her life. And guess what? There is legal support for someone who is in an oppressed position, even on an individual scale, if they carry out an act of violence against their oppressor, let alone a nation.
Okay.
And that is not the root cause of the problem. The root cause of the problem is Zionism, which is a supremacist terrorist movement occupying Palestine.
Mahmoud Odi, listen, everybody, you can download his book for free. It's called The 2048, a manifesto for the one-state solution in Israel and Palestine. It is free download. Just Google it and you'll find it. Mahmoud, you've got to come back because we didn't get enough time. We totally didn't get enough time.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for availing us with all your knowledge and much more. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you very much. You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
To your number one station for talk.
99.3 Nigeria Info.
99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
Hey there, mums and dads. Did you know that some
99.3 Nigeria Info. We are more than just radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Nigeria Info FM. Check us out on Facebook at Nigeria Info 99.3. Follow us on Twitter at Nigeria Info FM and on Instagram at Nigeria Info FM Lagos for live updates as it happens. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.